In today's episode, we are diving into the unique intersection that it comes with being a fiction author and how that impacts your well-being, whether it be world building, creating characters, or the strong narratives that come especially with fantasy and sci-fi. We'll get into some actionable tips that can help you maintain your energy and your structure of your story from draft manuscript all the way to polished novel. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Creative Cynergy podcast, where we're talking mind-body wellness for writers and creative professionals. As always, I am your host, Coach Cyn, and I will be your guide on your journey through writing and wellness. So if you've ever felt like when you're building your worlds in either any type of speculative fiction, be it fantasy, sci-fi, or dystopian, any combination of those, if it feels like while you're building the world, it's actually crushing you, you're not alone. So listen up. This video is actually going to directly focus on some of the reasonings behind what's happening and how you can, make small changes so that you don't wind up getting, creator burnout while you were trying to establish, especially if it's a longer series, when you're trying to establish this world that's in your head and get it down onto a page and into a series of books. It can actually start to take its toll on your energies, your mental capacity. It gets really kind of stressful when you have all these ideas floating around in your head and you're trying to get them onto the page. It can become a little demanding and seriously start to impact not only your creative output, but your health as well. It takes a toll on it. So what we want to do in this particular episode is unpack some of the things that come up while you are creating your worlds and those strong narratives that you're exploring, and how they impact your creative output and your mental energies, physical energies, and what you can do to maintain your flow without getting into sort of painting yourself into a corner, or almost to the point where you decide you just scrap it. You don't want to do it anymore because you don't have the joy, the spark, the spark of the idea that originally comes. I've gotten it myself. You get so excited to want to dive into this journey. And then when you start laying down the ideas, it can get a little bit overwhelming, especially if it's massive, specifically in science fiction and fantasy. If it's a massive undertaking, it can start to lead to doubt, honestly. And that just comes with not knowing how to navigate putting all of these ideas into a structured format and maintaining your energy as well to keep yourself motivated and headed in the right direction to complete that story that you're trying to accomplish. For me, one of the first things that starts to impact my creative output is distraction. I have a 3-part series that I just got back to. It's actually been on the back burner for, I want to say, almost 5 years, if not longer. It was something that I started a while ago. Actually, it was in 2016, so it's been 10 years. Yeah. So I started this. I had an idea to develop it. Other things took precedence, including other novels. But right now, I felt like the time to get back into it. I really haven't written anything fiction-wise in quite a bit of time. So I wanted to get back to exploring this story. And what I found is the reason I haven't been getting to it is I've been distracted with basically life. You got to pay the bills. You have other things happening, family-wise or whatever. I'm trying to build a business. I'm right out here in front of you doing these podcasts and trying to get you information every couple of weeks. So there's a lot of balls up in the air. And that's one of the first things that can impact your creative output when you're trying to build specific, worlds and universes. If you get distracted, trying to get back into it is going to take a little bit of time. Sort of like if you have a car that's been sitting out, it's an older vehicle, and you go to turn the key and you got to rev it up to get it, purring again. That's sort of the way, at least for me, that my mind gets back into the flow of the story. But really all it takes is if you have a couple of pages down already just start to reread them. This is what I did with the novel series that I'm talking about. It's a dystopian, which I've not written before. So what I did is I've gone back in and I started rereading what I already had down, which for me was a full draft of a manuscript. But to be perfectly honest, over the years of it sitting there, I've gotten new ideas. So now, and this is why I always say, write for the wastebasket. The entire thing is going to be scrapped, but I will salvage, what I like from the original and just build on that. So if you do have little pieces of information that you've written down already and you can access them, that is a great way to jump back in. I will say this as well. It's okay to take a break. Don't ever think that you have to force a story out of you. That's really not the way to get your best work out onto the page, is to force it. What you want to do is actually allow yourself to tap into the creativity, the original spark of the idea, which we were talking about before. You want to get back to a place where you are excited to write. And sometimes that takes stepping away from it. Now, maybe you don't have to do that for 10 years, but in defense of me, at least, I don't have readers waiting for this book because I hadn't announced it yet, unlike some other authors. I won't name names, but you know what I'm talking about. Now, there's a reason why navigating the labyrinth of what is called speculative fiction, essentially sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian, is a little bit more complex than, say, when you're diving into romance or westerns or something of that nature. Now, I'm not taking anything away from those genres. They have their own challenges. But what we're diving into right now, what I really wanted to touch on was the unique intersection between doing this type of heavy world building and how it impacts your wellness. So when it comes to these types of themes in sci-fi and fantasy, it's very, very complex. Like I said before, everything's almost being pulled from scratch from within your head, which is an amazing, feeling. But at the same time, like I said, it's like really jumbled at first, and then you got to get it down on the page where it makes sense. And then also, a lot of the times, particularly in fantasy, I would say, maybe not as much in sci-fi, but definitely fantasy and dystopian, the themes are very, very dark. So the more that you start to write this type of narrative and go deeper into the introspection of your characters, it can draw up a lot of stuff. A lot of us become writers for a reason, because we have stories that we want to tell. And a lot of the times when we are writing, we are pulling from stuff that has happened in our lives, or that it has impacted us in one way or another. So when you're writing these darker themes, stuff can come up, and that will definitely impact your well-being, because if it's something that you haven't dealt with, it can kind of hit you it sort of blindsides you. The good thing about this is when you're getting it out on the page, even if it's in a manner of fiction, you're still getting it out of you, and you're using it in a constructive manner. But still, that's not to say that it's not going to feel heavy during the process. So you need actionable steps to take to almost sort of recover from that, because it is exhausting. There are strategies that you can implement to maintain your mental clarity and your physical well-being, because like I said, the exhaustion will set in, especially if you're trying to grind it out over and over again. And this starts with realistic expectations of yourself. Now, I tend to work well with my back against the wall, so I will give myself crazy deadlines, and they're all self-imposed, So I can change them anytime that I want, but the reason that I do it this way is so that the pressure of it forces me to have an idea of when I need to finish. Similar to having, say, an agent or a publisher waiting for that manuscript to be written, and you know that you need to hand it in order to not have to, hand back that advanced royalty check. Am I right? So it's just a way to establish routine, but like I said, make sure that it's realistic. Whether that's, just telling yourself you're going to write every day at a specific time, or you're going to do a specific word count, or you're going to write a chapter a day. Make sure it is a measurable goal for yourself that you can attain. And like I said, make it realistic, because once you start trying to dive into these lofty like goals, if you start to miss the mark, this can start to impact you as well. So make sure they're attainable goals, and then this will help you to build momentum and continue your writing. The other thing, like I was saying before, is to introduce micro breaks. And this, when you're doing your world building, especially early on, and you're just starting to get a couple of chapters out on the page, make sure you take those breaks when needed. Get up, walk around, clear your head. If you're stuck on something, you don't have to sit there and stare at a blank screen. I mean, Hollywood does so many weird things with the writer characters. We always have to be sitting there in a dark room just staring at a typewriter of all things, or staring at a computer screen with a blinking cursor or what have you. No, get up, walk around, take your time, come back, and then your head will be a little bit clearer, your energy will be up, and you can get back into that world building. Often I do little videos called Inside the Author Studio. Well, right now we're going to talk about the Author Toolkit, which is essentially your body and your brain. And this is why I always tout them coming together in synergy and working well to establish your best creative output. If one isn't working the same as the other, then everything's going to be off. You want them to be working in unison. So prolonged sitting as an author will start to make an impact on you physically, as well as drain you mentally as you're establishing your story. So, eye strain is a huge thing. If you're staring at the screen upwards of 8, 12, 14 hours a day, it's really going to start to impact your eyes that get dried out from the blue light. That's one of the things I speak on in my book, Staying Fit While You Sit, is the importance of maintaining your eye health, because we stare at screens a lot lately, and it actually really is, causing a negative effect on your eyes. So make sure you take care of that as well. The other thing, and I've touched on this many times, is to make sure your workspace is set up ergonomically. So you immediately, when you slide into that chair and you sit in front of that computer or whatever it is that you work on, hey, sometimes I still do longhand writing on a legal pad. But as soon as you slide into that space, it's your comfortable space. You're ready to work. You feel energized. You feel good when you sit down and you're ready to accomplish the task at hand. Build that world, flesh out those characters, but you want it set up in a way that it will maintain the ergonomics of your back. Posture is really important when you're sitting down to work, especially the long hours that we put in as authors. So make sure that you have support for your lower back, that your knees are not being pulled in every which way. Your hips as well should be nice and stabilized. Make sure that the screen is set up so that your eyesight is like directly on it. And again, all of these things, you can find more information in my book, Staying Fit While You Sit. I go into much, much more detail about ergonomics and setting up your workspace to help it work for you. The other thing, like I was saying about speculative fiction specifically, is the emotional narratives that will come up in specific storylines. For instance, like I said, the one that I am working on is a dystopian. It's set in, what I'm calling a new world. The old world has fallen behind. And so I'm tapping into a lot of things that, quite frankly, a lot of people don't want to talk about these days. But I've never been that type of author who cowers to the whims of others. I'm going to write what I'm going to write. And a lot of the times, like I said, that brings up heavy emotional things. So when you do wind up writing this stuff, and it's like, it's sort of, that, like I said, the exhaustion sets in, and it's what you want to do is absolutely decompress, especially if you write a heavier scene that, say, is, quite impactful to you, like specifically, and it's like going to be impactful to the readers as well. Make sure that you decompress after that. And what I like to do is I'll go and watch something funny. I'll immediately go to like a Modern Family or a Friends or something like that I'm used to it. The cadence of it is upbeat and quirky, and it immediately flushes out like the darker tones that I have been, focused on writing that got a little bit heavier. So it helps when you have balance like that. The other thing I will say that is if you are stuck and you're finding it a little bit difficult to get into some of the heavier world building aspects that are out there, is to absolutely go and read something that is along the same lines of what you're writing, and especially try out different authors. If you're always reading the same author all the time, you sort of get yourself pigeonholed. It's good as an author to explore other ideas and other voices out there, and this is how it helps you to develop your own voice, and then you start to be known for a specific way of writing. I'm very, very good at dialogue. A lot of people enjoy the pacing of my novels, but that came from years of trial and error, and reading different authors. The other thing I will say, and which is probably controversial, is to, watch TV or movies to get motivated. And, for me, what actually wound up helping me to start writing my novel series again is because I wound up watching this show called Fringe. I know that it was popular when it first came out. I had never seen it before, but when I started to watch it, I noticed that it had similar themes to this dystopian series that I was writing, and it actually started to energize me, and I got more ideas from watching this show and watching how they developed the specific storylines, especially as it relates throughout, over an arc of a 5-season run. So that's an important thing to remember too, is if you are getting into fantasy or sci-fi, chances are you started doing that because you fell in love with reading those kind of books. And more often than not, they are 10, 20 novels deep, some of these series. And as authors ourselves, we get these lofty ideas as well, and we want to explore them over the course of however many books that it takes. So pace yourself and try not to burn out on ideas and try to cram everything in at once, because that's another way that you can get too exhausted or mentally stressed, is if you're trying to cram too much into all of your books. And this is where sometimes an outline will help. Like I've said in past videos, I don't like to do full outlines, but I do find it helpful now if I'm doing a series, which I've definitely started doing longer series. I do like to have, especially a Bible, as I call it, to refer back to. And as it relates to like sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian, it's helpful to have that within arm's reach so that you remember the complex ideas and names that you've come up with, and you can just refer to them quickly. So flesh out things like that. Character backstory is great because it helps you to flesh out the characters and know what they would do in any kind of circumstance they come up with. And then, like I said before, also let them lead you. The more that a character starts to take shape on the page, the more they will seem real to you, and they will start to lead you in directions you weren't even expecting. So that is half of the fun of writing. And remember that it should be fun. This is why we get into being writers in the first place. We love storytelling. We fell in love with it from reading other authors, and we want to emulate that ourselves. I mean, that's what happened to me. When I was in school, I read Dean Koontz for the first time. His book Intensity actually struck such a chord with me that I said, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to draw emotions out of readers the way he just did for me. So remember why you got into it. Don't let the heaviness of the world building impact your well-being, because it does get heavy at sometimes. And if you absolutely need to reach out and talk to somebody about it, or just to bounce ideas back and forth that maybe you're stuck with, there's so many writing communities out here. Discord's a great one. You can leave a comment here on my video as well, and let's bounce ideas back and forth on how we can maintain our well-being while developing our world building for our speculative fiction. And that goes for any genre as well. To touch on speculative fiction, like especially fantasy, sci-fi, and dystopian, because they are heavier topics that do lend themselves to a little bit more of a wider expanse that you have to draw and tap into. And sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. It can feel daunting of a task, but again, remember why you got started And remember, there are ways that you can maintain your creative energy and your world building without it having to damage your well-being. This is fiction. Fiction should be fun. There's enough crap going on in the real world that we can leave out of our vocations and just try to remember to enjoy it. But also, like I said, there's actionable tips that you can take. And again, if you are struggling with figuring out how to do some of those things, check out my book, Staying Fit While You Sit. I also have a free Healthy Habits toolkit that can get you started on the road to your wellness journey. And as always, these podcast shows are aimed at helping you with your writer wellness and your creative output. So next time, I'll see you here for Creative Synergy, and we're here to keep you healthier and more productive. But until then, show's over, Cynergy.